What's up guys, Tim Little. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today's video we are talking smallmouth, finesse tactics for big smallmouth. And you know, we get this question quite a bit. What is your favorite finesse setup or favorite finesse technique for smallmouth? And honestly, it is such a broad category. I couldn't cover it all in one answer. So today we're covering it all. Hair jigs, swim baits, tubes, Ned rigs, all of it. Let's go. So smallmouth, you know, quickly they are becoming my favorite species out of the three major, you know, the smallmouth, spotted, and largemouth. You know, smallmouth bass, they've really intrigued me. Hopefully you guys have seen kind of that transition in our videos the last year or two. Matt and I, we've really expanded our horizons in the smallmouth fisheries. You know, we fished some of the best fisheries in the entire United States. You know, Michigan, the Great Lakes, Wisconsin, the Pacific Northwest. Out here in California, we got some good fisheries too. Havasu, all over the country. And smallmouth, they just really intrigue me because one, they are mean. They are probably the meanest out of all three of the species. And two, just how quickly they can ghost you, right? They travel so far and disappear overnight. But when you find that mega school, you can catch 4s, 5s, 6s, even 7-pound smallmouth on almost every cat. It is so much fun when you can find those big schools of smallies. So today's video, again, finesse tactics for smallmouth bass. And it's such a vast category because, you know, out here in California, we have deep reservoirs. You know, back in the Midwest, you got the Great Lakes, you know, 25, 30 foot of visibility. So there's so many different variables. But in today's video, I'm going to try and cover it all. I got a handful, probably a couple handful of baits for you. And I'm going to let you decide what best technique fits your fishing. So I'll give you several examples of different styles of baits, and then you can apply each to your fishing. You know, most of these baits that we talked about, that we're going to talk about today, or the technique, I should say, we've done in-depth videos per each technique. Most of them, not all of them. So I will go through the technique, but I won't go super in-depth just to save time, because I'm sure this video is going to be fairly long. But I wanted to start off with finesse swim baits, because hands down, that is my #1 approach when I am coming to a new fishery. I want to see what caliber of fish that fishery has, and it gets big bites, right? That I can instantly upsize the size of fish that I'm targeting and catching when I go to a swim bait. So my #1, you guys have probably seen this bait so many times. You know, my personal, my PB smallmouth is right at 7 pounds. And it was caught on this right here. This is a Chartreuse and blue Kitech, and that is paired up with our designed tactical finesse swim bait head. Now what this is, we've designed this exactly for these situations. Clear water, lighter line, lighter wire hook. It has all the same great features as the Matt Allen, the Matt Allen swim bait head, but the tactical finesse head still has that 30-degree line tie. It really makes that bait unstable in the water, gives a lot of belly roll, a lot of side-to-side roll, and we just paired that up with a lighter wire hook. So in those finesse bodies of water, real clear water, and you don't want to necessarily run braid to leader or big line, you can get away with a lighter wire hook to get good hook penetration. But this right here, guys, this is hands down my #1 setup. This is a Chartreuse and blue Kitech, paired up the tactical finesse head, and it is killer. Now, swim baits themselves, it is very important to understand, you know, there's so many different soft plastic swim baits on the market, but in these type of scenarios, when I am chasing big smallmouth, typically in my mind, that means colder water. You know, it's not that real warm largemouth or that, you know, Florida water, California water. We're talking cold water. So I want you guys to really think about the type of paddle tail swim bait you put on your head, because they are made out of different plastics or they have different densities. And what I've found, the softer the plastic, the more movement you get in that colder water. You know, some of those baits just get really stiff and you don't get any kind of movement out of it at all. I found that the Keitech works very, very well. Now, this is a 4.3. That is a 3.8. You know, in my mind, a 4.8 Keitech, that is a swim bait. That's not a finesse swim bait. But these little smaller sizes, you know, this guy right here, that's a 3.8. Big smallmouth still have fairly small mouths. You know, I've caught big ones on glide baits, big ones on big swim baits, but you miss a lot of your bites. So if you downsize just a little bit and you go with a 4.3 or a 3.8 or even a 3.3 paired up with this head right here, you guys, that is money. You know, the reason I started off with this, one, because it's my #1 technique, but two, I don't want you guys to get caught up in just throwing this little guy right here. This is a 2.8 paired up on a guppy head. If you guys are looking to catch a lot of fish and don't necessarily care about upsize and you just want to see if there's fish in your bodies of water, this guy is money. This guy, these ones right here, I'll actually throw on a bait caster, 10, 12, 14 pounds straight fluoro if the water's very clear. I'm no longer going braid to leader. This guy right here, you can actually get away with throwing on your favorite finesse spinning rod. This is a little 2.8 paired up with a guppy head. And again, just like every video, I will link all of this stuff down below in the video description. Each individual technique, I will list colors of the baits I like, if they require a head, the size and color that we use, and also the gear, the rods, the reels, line, all that stuff. We'll link for each technique down because this is going to be in depth and I don't want you guys to have to take a lot of notes. So the guppy head. So I start off with the 4.3, the 3.8 on a bait caster, straight fluoro, typically 10, 12, 14 pound test, depending on if I'm fishing around, if I'm open water or around cover. But the guppy head, that is money. The other one that we've really preached to you guys lately is this guy right here. This is the Megabass Okashira head. And what this has is a little blade that gives that body rock to this whole presentation, and that is the Spark Shad. That's a little 3-inch swim bait. And this catches big ones. You know, our good buddy out in Michigan, Goby, he sticks giants on this, and he's actually the one that turned myself and Matt onto it. So if you want a little different presentation, check this guy out right here. You know, we've done in-depth videos on this setup right here, but check it out because it's a combination between a swim bait and kind of like that spy bait. Gives that extra vibration, little extra body roll, but that guy is a must. You can pair it up with a little Keitech, a little 3.3, but we found that it actually works best on that little Spark Shad. The last swim bait, and then we'll get out of this category because it is such a big category. You can't leave home, no matter where you are fishing for big smallmouth, without the dark sleeper. Now, I've done videos in the past on, you know, not being a sleeper on the dark sleeper. It flat out catches them, you know. And one of the things I've learned with traveling all over the country and fishing all these different great smallmouth bodies of water is one thing they have in common is gobies. Gobies and little perch, little bluegill. This bait right here mimics those perfectly. You can get away with throwing this on a spinning rod. You can throw it on a bait caster. They make it in several different sizes, several different weights. So depending on the current or your water situation, you can pick a bait that matches the hatch perfectly and matches your fishing technique, either spinning or casting. Now right here, it's got a little weed guard right there built into the dorsal fin, but I could not do this video without giving this guy a little bit of love because this little dark sleeper flat out catches them. You know, those gobies out there on the Great Lakes, they get big, but typically I like to keep my baits pretty concise, pretty small to get those, just helps with those big smallmouth getting the fish in, or getting the bait engulfed and getting a good hook set. So that is swim baits. Kind of blew through them, but we got a lot of other techniques to start talking about. I kind of threw this one in. I'm not going to talk about a jerkbait. I'm not going to talk about a soft jerkbait like a fluke or something like that, only because I feel like that's kind of transitioning into the reaction fishing, the power fishing. So I'm going to kind of bridge the gap with this guy right here. Now this is a duo spybait. Got it in 2 different sizes. That is the 80 and the 90. If you guys haven't heard us talk about spybaiting, Matt and I both do it. It is a very special technique, and where this technique really shines is when your fish are suspended. The cool thing about the spybait, it's a hard bait. Hard bait, not a soft bait, but it swims kind of like your swim bait. You cast it out, it falls, it kind of shimmies down, you count it down 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, depending on the seconds you let it drop, and then you just slowly reel it. Now this is a finesse technique because you are throwing this on 5, 6, 8 pound fluorocarbon. Fire it out there, count it down, and then just reel it back. And it has counterbalancing propellers front and back, and that gives that bait some shimmy. And as those fish are tracking, I've seen them do it. They track it, and it's almost like they get like hypnotized or in a trance from just watching that belly roll, that belly rock, and then they eat it. So this guy, I threw it into the finesse category because you throw it on finesse gear. This is another bait right here that I throw on straight fluorocarbon. Matt and I, we both love throwing braid to leader. We do it on most, if not 90% of our techniques. This guy right here is one that I throw on straight fluorocarbon. Again, you don't want those fish suspended in clear water to see your connection knot coming right before the bait. So a spybait, if you guys haven't tried that, definitely check those guys out. And I will link some of my favorite colors down below in the video description. Now, one other bait that I want to talk about before we get into the real, well, this is a real finessey bait too, but it kind of goes hand in hand with chucking and winding, casting out there and just reeling it back. And that is a little hair jig. If you guys have never thrown a little hair jig on 4, 5, 6 pound test fluorocarbon in clear water, you guys are missing out. You know, on a recent trip, Matt and I were back Midwest. We were, where were we fishing? We were fishing Bay of Green Bay, and the fish were up super shallow. You could see them. And with this little hair jig, this is actually the Outcast. This is the fighter hair jig. Comes in several different colors to kind of match whatever you're trying to imitate, crawdad, whatever. You fire it out there and you just slowly reel it back, and this little thing with that little hair just kind of pulsates and just gives that real unintrusive presentation. And again, another technique that I throw straight fluorocarbon. If you guys know me, you know that I throw a lot of braid to leader, straight fluorocarbon, again, typically 4 or 5 pound test. That way you can get those long casts. And I throw a technique specific rod for this, typically a 7'6". You get that long cast, real light action, and you don't have to really hook set them. You just let that rod load up. I will link, I actually throw the fighter rod. It's a Daiwa Tatula Elite hair jig rod. I'll link that down below. But any of your light 7'2" to 7'6" rods will work. If you guys just want to try to get into this, any of your light rods will work as well. But technique specific rods are fun, especially when you get those long rods, make those long casts. You see those fish schooled up, just hunting the shallows. Little hair jig, very unintrusive, but sticks big ones. So that wraps it up for the chuck and wind baits. Now I got a handful of baits I want to talk to you guys about for actually finesse fishing. You know, throwing it out there and fishing the bottom. Probably the #1 bait that, let's talk drop shot. We'll get that out of the way. Drop shot is a very special technique. It's one of those techniques that you almost have to have tied on 99% of the time, especially if you're fishing clear water. And 9 times out of 10, when I'm thinking smallmouth, I'm thinking clear water fisheries. I'm thinking 10, 12, 15, 20, 30 feet of visibility. Those fish can see you a long ways. That's why a lot of these techniques, I'm using straight fluorocarbon. If I'm using braid, I'm using braid to leader with a long leader, 15, 20, 25 foot leader. That way you don't have to, if you do break off, you don't have to retie multiple times in the day. You can get away with that long leader, and the fish don't see that connection knot before they see the bait. Drop shot is a must. One, casting out and firing and fishing target specific areas. If you have a rock pile or a hump or a lawn chair or something that is just different in the area that you're fishing, those smallmouth will hold on it. And a lot of times, many smallmouth will hold on it. You know, I've seen where you can catch 4 or 5 fish off a single one boulder or a lawn chair or an umbrella or just something that is different in the water. Those fish use that as cover, and that is what they ambush out of. So fire it out there and fish those exact spots, right? And just shake that worm. But more importantly, the drop shot, where it shines in deeper water, when you're looking at your electronics and you see an arch down there, you drop straight down and let these baits do the work. That is typically where your drop shot is gonna shine compared to all these other baits, is vertically fishing. 2 baits that I really like: the Smallie Smasher by Big Bite and the Half Shell by Strike King. Those are smaller presentations. You know, if you guys have followed some of our other drop shot videos, you know that typically we like to throw 6-inch worms, maybe a little smaller, but these are smaller, 3.5, 4-inch worms that really mimic those gobies, those small bait fish that the smallmouth are eating. And these guys are awesome. So definitely check out these. I will link some of my favorite colors down below in the video's description. But again, drop shot is a must, especially if you're gonna be fishing in deeper water and you watch your electronics a lot. That is where you're gonna vertically fish. A lot of these lakes, especially the Great Lakes, have current or big wind. You drift, and you can actually drift and just drag that drop shot, let that Smallie Smasher tail just down there, just, you know, flip around, kind of just nonchalantly mimics just bait fish being stupid down there. So adjust your leader. You know, again, we've done in-depth videos on this, but typically 12 to 18 inches to get that bait up off the bottom so those fish can see it. Smallmouth, they key in on their vision, right? That is their sense of, that's what they hunt with, is their vision. So they like clear water, sunny days where they can see a long ways. But that drop shot is a must. So now transitioning from the drop shot, let's talk tubes, because you pretty much can't go anywhere smallmouth fishing and not have a tube tied on. And if you guys had followed us for a long time, you know that we really like the Dry Creek tube. It comes in some phenomenal colors, had a lot of success out here on the West Coast, and it's just a different profile tube, little skinnier along the main part of the bait, and obviously it's got your tentacles, your kickers, whatever you want to call it down there. But the Dry Creek tubes come in some phenomenal colors, and they work. Now, with that said, you smallmouth fishermen, you know the importance of having this type of head. You know, this is kind of a bulbous head, shorter body, real soft tentacles. You know, Matt and I, we used to have our tubes custom poured because we liked that real soft, salty tube. Big Bite has now come out. This is their tour tube. This is a 3.5-inch tour tube. And I want you guys to look at how soft these things are. If I can grab one, they're all. Look at that. These are better than the custom tubes that we were having poured. So we really like these tubes. I will link some of my favorite colors down below in the video description and the heads that we use. Typically we use the Bite Me heads, depending on if we're using a finesse rod, like a spinning rod, or a casting rod, will depend on the size of the head, the weight, and all that stuff. But you guys should definitely check these out. These are by far my favorite tube with that type of body shape. So much fun. And with a tube, you can fish it in multiple ways. You know, you can crack it where you're working it, you're snapping it, you're working it very, very aggressive. Typically, you throw that on a little bit heavier of a head, or you can drag it. You know, I've talked about dragging a tube before. It really mimics that goby or that crayfish, that crawdad down on bottom. But a tube is a must, guys. I can't stress that enough. And where it really shines for me is getting real erratic with it. Popping it, reeling it, popping it, and it's darting around. As it falls, it swims down. Really, really mimics a bait fish, especially a sculpin or a goby. And you guys that are on the Midwest that don't have gobies, definitely look up sculpin, because out here in Clear Lake we have them. They're in so many different bodies of water that I think a lot of people don't realize, and a tube really, really mimics those very, very well. So, kind of going through this, hang in there, guys. We're almost done. But I wanted to make sure that I talked about all these techniques, because each individual technique has its time and place when it shines and it outfishes the others. How do you do a smallmouth video without talking about the Ned Rig? Got some of my favorite Neds here. Some you've heard about, and some maybe you haven't heard about. Obviously, you can't mention a Ned rig without talking about the traditional, the TRD, the one that started it all. It's a Z-Man, the TRD, made with Elastec. It floats very, very well. You pair that up with your favorite TRD head, and you will catch fish. Now, I got four. I must have forgot it. 4 other baits. If you guys are Ned fishermen, you guys, they are a must, and they all have different actions, and they all shine in different situations. Number 1, I'm going to talk about it because I forgot it. It's going to be the X Zone, their Ned Rig. I'll link the colors, the name, all that stuff down below in the video description. That is quickly become one of our favorite Ned Rig baits. It floats. It's got a little bulbous tail on it, and it stood out when we've done our underwater videos. It definitely, out of the other baits that we've tested, that one really caught our eye, and we really like it. I can't believe I forgot it, but I did not forget to talk about it. So the X Zone, I will link that down below. Matt loves it as well. Let's talk about, we talked about the TRD. Let's talk about the TRD bugs. This is a bait that came out of iCast a couple years ago. Again, that's a Elastec. Oh, my bad. A Elastec, very, very stretchy. You can catch multiple fish on one bait. It floats as well. So you pair that up with your favorite Ned head. It just has a different profile. Kind of has that beaver, that Reaction Innovation style profile, and just really mimics a crawdad or a crayfish very, very well. So if you guys like throwing the traditional TRD, definitely check out the TRD bugs, the crawl, and the craw, and the ticklers. Those all are TRD Elastec baits, and they have different actions, and they just give that traditional Ned Rig a little different look. One note, make sure if you guys do, sorry, I'm shaking the camera. If you guys do have these, Elastec does not play well with other soft plastic baits. So make sure they are in their own container, keep them in the bag, whatever, but keep them away from your other plastics. Now, some other favorites. I have 2 other favorites that I really want to talk about. One is going to be the Robo Worm. As you can see in most of these colors, I'll link them all down below in the video description. They all either mimic crayfish or gobies or sculpins, those type of color patterns, colorways. 2 of my favorite. These are both by Robo Worm. This is Desert Craw, for obvious reasons. It mimics a crawdad very, very well. I've caught a lot of big smallmouth on this guy. And then this is a Tackle Warehouse exclusive color. This is I think it's a green pumpkin. I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but I will link it down below in the video description. You can see this is more of a green pumpkin. It's got a little bit of dark in there, some black, some blue flake, and it just mimics those gobies very well. Caught a lot of big fish in crystal clear water on this guy as well. Maybe it's TW green pumpkin. I can't believe I'm forgetting it right now, but so many things going on. Last but not least is the Ned Bomb. You see it's a little bit different profile than your traditional Ned baits. It's made by Missile Baits, and it's got that kind of beaver tail on there. So a little bit more action. If you're looking to work a bait fairly quickly, it doesn't really matter if the bait stands up or not. You know, the TRD stands up, the X-Zone stands up. Those baits work very well just dragging. It's down there, kind of pop it up, it's just down there, the tail's kind of dancing around. But if you're getting erratic and you're popping these things and kind of hopping them off bottom, you know, 2, 4, 6 inches, letting it fall, it doesn't really matter if they float or not because you're getting real aggressive with the bait itself. And this bait really shines when you get aggressive. All of my Ned rigs, I pair that up with that tungsten. That is that Swagger Tackle tungsten TRD or Ned rig head. Very stout hook. You can throw this on a bait caster if you would wish or if you'd like, but the advantages of tungsten, you get more sensitivity, it's more dense than lead, so you get better contact, better feel in your rod, and smaller profile. It weighs more than lead, so you can get a smaller profile with the same weight. All right, what else we got? One more technique that I really want to talk about. Recently on a trip, not recently, several months, 5, 6, 7 months ago, I got to go out and fish with my good buddy Kurt out in Wisconsin. And we got to do something I'd never really done before, and that was skip ultra shallow docks for big smallmouth. I'm talking about docks that were in less than 18 inches of water. And the big smallmouth would pull up underneath those docks because it was the only cover, the only shade around. And really the only way to effectively fish for them was throwing a weightless Senko. You know, we probably could have thrown a Nico rig, something with a little nail weight in there, but the weightless Senko, what was really cool about this, and it took me a little bit to kind of figure it out, and then we blasted them. Rig it weedless. I typically like some kind of hook with a weed guard just because like that specific lake had a lot of grass. But if you don't have grass, you don't have to necessarily rig it weedless. But I rig it wacky rigged. And what we would do, we would stay way back off the dock. Rig it just like this. I use the, these are those clear G7, guess you can call them O-rings. Get the pliers, open it up, run whatever your favorite wacky rigged worm through, and then hook your bait around that. But what we would do, we'd stay way far, you know, ways away, pretty far back, and we'd take our spinning rods on light line, and it was kind of stressful because you're fishing around docks with like 6-pound test. And once you hook those fish, it is a war to get them out. But what we were doing, we would find where the shade line was on the docks. Again, weightless Senko, skip that bait back up underneath there, and just let it fall. And more often than not, they would not eat it on the initial fall, which I thought was really weird. If you guys throw weightless Senkos a lot, typically those fish, as this thing is just falling down slowly, it's what's so cool about this bait in particular, falls down super slow and those fish just come over and just eat it. Well, they weren't typically doing it like that or biting it that way that day. Skip it under there, we'd let it fall, and we knew we were on bottom. It was only 18 inches deep, and sometimes we wouldn't even touch it for 25, 30, 45 seconds, and you'd go to give it a little shake, and then dong, you'd reel down and set, and almost not slack them, but give them a little bit of play, and 9 times out of 10 they would swim out underneath the dock, and then you could play them like normal. But I've never done that before. Fish ultra clear water, ultra shallow, like I said, a foot deep, 18 inches deep, and there was 5-pound smallmouth up underneath those docks. So much fun. Another bait, I talked about it in previous videos, the Yum Dinger. You can get those for fairly cheap. They fall extremely slow, and they work well. Money's on the line, big fish are on the line. Go with the Senko, 5-inch Senko. If you're just fun fishing or just messing around and you want to save a little bit of money, go with the Young Dinger because it flat out catches them. Again, guys, I will link all this stuff down below in the video description. I felt like I kind of flew through each technique. I'm sure this video is going to be like 25, 30 minutes long, but it's important to talk about all these. And Matt's interrupting me. And again, it's important to talk about all these because they all have their time to shine. But again, my #1 favorite, I have caught more big fish on this setup right here, a 4.3 paired up with a tactical finesse head. It just catches big ones, and I don't leave home without it. Again, it's exactly why we designed this lighter hook. It's what this technique was meant for. A lighter wire hook, clear water, lighter line, and this is money. You know, like I said, it caught so many big fish on it. But swim baits, tubes, Neds, phone is going crazy all of a sudden. 3 phone calls in 30 seconds. But finesse fishing for smallmouth, you guys, don't be afraid to throw a spinning rod. Don't be afraid to throw straight fluorocarbon, especially on those horizontal presentations. Those baits those techniques, when you're firing out and you're bringing that bait back to you, those smallmouth are going to hit it like a freight train. If they don't, it'll load up. So use a little bit longer rod, lighter line. You got all the space in the world, especially out on the Great Lakes, to just play those fish. You know, you can catch 4, 5, 6 pound smallmouth on 4, 5, 6 pound tests. It happens all the time. It is so much fun, and I love finesse fishing. More importantly, I love smallmouth. They are so cool. They are so ferocious. They travel so much, and their mentality, they're just a crazy fish. They're just mean, and they are fun to catch. They fight so hard. If you guys have never caught a smallmouth, definitely try it. I think you guys will be hooked. If you guys have any questions on this, I'm sure you will. Please leave those down below in the comments section. Like I said, I kind of blew through all these different techniques. We do have specific in-depth techniques, or videos on almost all these techniques, so we'll link those down below as well. But again, questions, comments, leave those down below in the comments section. We appreciate you guys. I will link all of this stuff down below in the video description. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. We are growing faster than ever, and it is awesome. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. If you guys like this video or learned something from it, please give us a thumbs up. As always, guys, we appreciate you. Have a good one.